So we've got some folks we need to keep in our prayers. Georgia, number one. Georgia's, last I heard, was in the Rockdale Hospital. And they gave her some patches and things for being nauseated and being pain a lot, and neither one of them worked. And that was yesterday, I think. And then today, the doctor called her. She called the doctor, and he said, well, you need to go to Rockdale Hospital. And so she went over there, and I think, Pat, tell us a little bit about that. You got more details than I do.
Her doctor, this is the same one that did surgery on her colon before.
Mm-hmm.
And he told her she had gone to Newton last time, and he said, I don't have a clear affiliation with Newton, but I have a very good one at Rockdale. So he asked her if she felt she was going to need to go to the hospital, please call him and go to Rockdale. And I told her, if you have to call me, I'll take you to Rockdale. If you're afraid of EMS won't take you here. But evidently she didn't make it very far.
Apparently, I talked with her this morning. That was before she was talking about going to the hospital today. She was talking about going to the hospital tomorrow or Friday to do some surgery. And apparently it got so bad that she had to go and get some relief on that. So we need to really keep her in our prayers. I'm deeply concerned about her situation.
Is her daughter still here?
No, she went back to Kentucky or Tennessee, and she's not coming back until she gets out of the hospital, is my understanding. She went home last week or week before, I think, and she wanted to come back, but Georgia told her to wait until she gets out of the hospital. I don't think the doctor wants her to stay by herself anymore. I don't know what's going to happen there. So we might want to call her and encourage her as much as we can.
Well, how's she getting back and forth?
Different people are taking her. Pat took her to the doctor yesterday, and I offered to take her today, but she said her friend, next door friend, who she's very close, and said she's going to take her today. So she's got different people, members of the church here, and friends over there. She's got 2 or 3 close friends in the neighborhood that she relies on. One particular that she gets help with that. But I think we probably need to keep our hands on the pulse on that as well, because something may come up that they can't help. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. What else? Who else? Timmy and Pat, we need to keep in our prayers. Anthony, we need to keep in our prayers. He had some surgery a couple of Fridays ago, 2 weeks ago. We pray that he's doing well. I know I'm forgetting somebody. I don't have any notes before me. Yes, ma'am? Tommy Waliver, that's right. I haven't heard this week how Tommy's doing, but last I heard it helped him a lot from what they did last time. I think they're going to put a stent, maybe, were to be a permanent, they don't have to worry about that water collecting anymore, or fluid, I should say. Who else?
My stepdad is going to his doctor tomorrow to find out what the next step is. His creatine levels are very high. His kidneys are not working properly, so he goes to Tallahassee to his doctor tomorrow.
Tallahassee. See, that's not far from
No, it's
Moultrie.
about a little over an hour.
Yeah. Been a long time since I've been down that way, Tallahassee, from that area. All right, who else? And I forgot his name.
Charles Mercer.
Charles Mercer. Okay, Charles Mercer. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Had 2 good friends, Dawson Church. The minister there has been battling cancer and think it's over and got it, but then he's going in stage 3 and he's been tough. And then had another close friend, long time, that had a serious stroke yesterday.
Oh, no.
Yesterday. And
Well, I hope they were able to help him. I think they got some kind of medicine, what I heard.
He's,
Actually, he had the stroke last week, I think it was, because he was in the
Yeah.
Dolphin Hospital for about 3 or 4 days, and then they sent him to the new one.
Mm-hmm.
He's in rehabilitation hospital in Chattanooga.
Okay.
And he was fine. This is so strange how this can happen, and they had gone to this place they like to get biscuit, he and his wife, and came back to eat. He was eating and dropped his biscuit and couldn't pick it up.
Uh-huh.
That's strange.
It's amazing. That's 2 or 3 things this year I've heard, that everything's just as normal as it can be.
He
And
was driving less than 10 minutes before.
it's amazing. Good Lord's watching over him.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sharon's having surgery.
Sharon, you having surgery?
Yes,
When?
Friday.
Friday? Now, I've tried to go to the hospitals to let you know. They won't let me in. I said, look, I'm a preacher. I don't care. Well, I'm joking. But no, they said you can't go in. But you have it at Friday, same place?
No, this is actually, will be in the doctor's office.
Doctor's office.
He's going to do, nasal cavity reconstruction.
Okay. Oh. I had that done 100 years ago, so I know what you'll be going through.
Kind of blockage. So
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
they put one of those,
Yeah.
things like a balloon in your nose.
Yeah. Well, they put some packing in there afterwards. I think the packing got me more than anything.
I've seen them remove it
Yeah, that's right.
a lot.
Yeah, I cried like a little baby. Oh, me. I tried not to whimper, but the tears just coming down my eyes. It was terrible. Sorry. We're getting you prepared. No surprises.
Maybe they made some improvements.
They probably have since I had it. That was 1975, 6.
It'll be a breeze.
Yeah. Yes, it's a lot of changes since then. Sorry.
Can't count on your friends, you can't.
That's right. That's right. Okay, Art, how about leading us in prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for allowing us to come together, worship you in spirit and in truth. Be with Bobby as he brings the lesson to us, to remember the things he has prepared. And thank you for your son who went to the cross, died for all of our sins. In your holy son's name, so humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we're talking about, let's see if I can make this thing work. We have talked about, I should say, being considerate. And I think we also mentioned about being kind and being friendly. We talked about also that we need to be, whoops, a little faster than I wanted it, but there it is. Compassionate, we talked about being present. And what does it mean to be present?
Giving her your full attention.
Yes, listen. Don't be all dreamland. Pay attention and listen to what's said. You know what? One of the hardest things for people to do? Listen. You know? It's very difficult. Most of the time when we're talking to somebody, we're ready to give them an answer before they can finish their sentence. You know? And if we happen to listen to the completion of the sentence, we'll probably change our answer. What do you think? Is that a possibility? I know I have. I've been guilty myself. I'd say, ooh. So listening is a very, very, very challenging thing for us. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about hospitality. And that's probably right now a very big challenge for everybody in the world. Wouldn't you think? Because we cannot practice like we want to because of whatever can happen, and showing respect to people pardon me?
The virus.
Yes, the virus. Okay. But out of that, the consequences or the side thing of it is that we can't come in contact with people like we generally do, okay, and or have done. I hope one day, and I don't know how long that's going to be, I'm not a prophet nor a son of a prophet, how long that will be in the future, okay? But I'm praying that one day this will be resolved where we can get back to life that is, I would call normal. What do you think? No comment?
I agree. Hope it's soon.
Hope and pray.
Hope and pray. Keep hoping and keep praying, right? All right, let me see. Let's see how this word is defined. Receiving or treating guests. Now look at that next word, 2 words. Or what? Strangers warmly, generously, with a hospitable family. That is to be very welcoming is the idea that has that. And we'll probably hit a couple areas. All right, someone read that next one for me. Characterized by
Betokening warmth and generosity toward guests or strangers, a hospitable smile.
okay. Basically, what does betokening mean? Pardon?
I'm not for sure, I haven't seen that word.
Is it like showing warmth and generosity?
Yeah, it's in that direction, showing points of going the direction of being warm and kind and loving and welcoming, that kind of stuff. Okay? All right, let's see what else we might have here. Let's see. Here's a good passage, Romans chapter 12 and verse 13. Distributing to the needs of the saints, giving to what? Now, is that a suggestion? Well, is that a command? It indicates that it is. I did not look up to see if it's an imperative or not, but I should have. But it indicates that it is. Now, there are things like the virus we have right here. It may temporarily prevent us from doing what we need to do, but sometimes people don't even do that. All right, when we get to this word right here, in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1, he says, a bishop must be what? Blameless, the husband of what? Temperate, sober-minded, good behavior, and what's that next one? Hospitable. Okay? Hospitable. Now, Titus chapter 1 and verse 8. Be hospitable. I'll get it out in a minute. A lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, and self-control. And I got one other that I want to cover here. Oops. Is in 1 Peter chapter 4 in verse 9. He says that we are to do it without what? Grumbling, complaining about it. And I think some versions of this passage uses the word do hospitality without complaining about it. You know? How about this one? We have a fellowship meal at such and such house next week. You ever heard anybody complain about that? Or how about this one? We have a fellowship meal every month, first and third Sunday. And someone said, another one? You heard that? That's a form of what? Complaining. Grumbling about it. And so we probably might want to think a little bit before we express a displeasure about hospitality. What do you think? And it's easy to do. I mean, sometimes we can say it or complain about something without even realizing that we're complaining until somebody says, hey, you complain. What are you complaining about? Okay? What reason do you have to complain? Well, we can do it easily. What do you think? Is that a possibility? Am I the only one that ever done that? Yeah, good. Well, then you'll never be guilty of it, I see. But we can if we're not real careful, not realizing it. And so we have to be careful about what we do. Eating together implies what? When do you get to know people, really get to know people? When you talk with them, and especially it's hard not to talk with somebody and have fellowship with somebody when you're eating with someone. Because you're sharing something together. You're sharing time, sharing food. You're sharing your thoughts. You're sharing fellowship spiritually as Christians. And so it's important. I think we really need, all of us as Christians, realize how valuable it is that we spend time with one another. Right now, it may be the telephone or FaceTime, or it may be texting or whatever, but we need to stay in contact with one another that we can build our relationships and maintain our relationships. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Well, the Lord built his fellowship, his communion around eating.
Mm-hmm.
So,
He did on several occasions, didn't he? Those who are like God prepares tables for others. Now, this is how he approached this lesson, is preparing a table or tables for others. And he started back in the Old Testament. And where do you think he started with preparing a table in the Old Testament? That would be a good one, but he didn't do it here. But that would be a very good one, because Genesis 18:19 makes it very clear that he did that. But he started with the tabernacle of the holy and holy place, that he prepared a place where people can commune with God and have the atonement that God wants them to have. And God prepared a place where they could meet and have this fellowship and communion with God Almighty. Does that make sense? So if I'm reading him correctly, then that means that we have some preparation to do in order to have hospitality. What do you think? Is that a possibility? Now, church leaders are to practice hospitality, as we mentioned just a moment ago. Christians are to, man, I wish this thing would stick where I want it to be. Christians are to practice hospitality, as Romans 12:13, Hebrews 13:2, and 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 9. We'll go into those a little bit more here in just a second. But it is clear that we are to cut. It includes, number one, welcoming fellow Christians. Turn to Romans chapter 12 and verse 13 and read that passage for me, please.
Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
Okay, that's pretty clear, isn't it? Share with God's people. I think in the King James Version it says distributing to the saints. Is that about right? And that you show hospitality to one another. Okay? So this is something that all Christians should do. You know, if we do not want to share time with people, show hospitality to one another, and we're going to go in more detail in just a second, it indicates there might be something wrong with us, with our spirituality. It might be that we might need to, at that point, if we get where we resent and don't want to have hospitality, show hospitality, participate in doing what is called hospitality, then we might need to get on our knees and start praying. Say, God, help me have a better attitude about things I need to build my relationship with you and with my fellow brethren. Is that a possibility? What's your thoughts?
if you have that kind of attitude, that's not loving your neighbor as yourself.
Woo, that's pretty clear. Very well done. And your neighbor is not just the person next door. It's anybody that may have need or somebody we come in contact. Welcoming strangers. You know, in the original, if I remember correctly, that is what hospitality basically outside the church meant. That you're welcoming people who are not Christian, people you don't know, I should say. People that you don't know. It could be Christian or non-Christian. And that you're welcoming that person, giving them a place to what? Stay. You know, they may be traveling. And a lot of times you read in the Bible that when somebody's traveling, like Abraham, it was mentioned a while ago, he offered them a place to stay. He didn't know them, but he offered a place. And there's more times than one that we can find examples of that in the Bible. What's your thoughts?
Well, actually, that occurred right on up to the automobile. I remember stories, we know stories about people were traveling from one place to another. They didn't have a motel to stop at.
That's right.
They stopped and people welcomed those strangers in. Preachers were traveling. They stayed with the people.
Well, you know what? I don't know if you've ever studied the Restoration Movement. That's one of the most fascinating studies that you can do next to the study of the church. But the Restoration Movement, listen, we have it wonderful. Even on our worst day, they really had it bad. Okay? Did you ever read about the Texas preacher, J.D. Tant? One of the funniest books, but one of the saddest books I've ever read. Very, very good. And he would travel long lengths of places and preach. And when he left, he may not gotten anything, or he may have.
He hardly ever got paid.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, and I guess it covers in that book. Actually, J.D. Tant's from Dallas.
That's right, Dallas, Georgia.
And they left their Civil War years. The family was Methodist. And then he was converted. And he really did some great mission work.
His son was Yater. You may still be living. I hadn't heard from Yater in years and years. He was.
Still active.
Is he?
We saw him about 2 years ago at Florida College.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, listen, he's one of the nicest guys. He was hypnotizing people there for a while. I don't know if he's still doing it, but when I knew him, he was. But he's a very nice person, very, very sharp person. And I appreciated getting to know him. But his dad did a lot of preaching, and he was the one I was telling you about. Was preaching, had a lamp over his top of his head, and he was preaching, and he took a deep breath, and it got one of the gnats or something. It got in his throat. He coughed for a few moments. He said, "It's a stranger," and I took him in. I never will forget that. That was a good one. But he had a sense of humor, but he was also very, 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 very clear on what you couldn't misunderstand anything he was saying. Now, in what we have back there and what you described, and what we described about those pioneer preachers, that they relied on members of the church or other people to take them in and help give them a place to live and something to eat. That's the kind of idea originally that the word hospitality had to do with. What's your thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Groups still, I don't know if they still do, but when my kids were teenagers, through scouting, they would do that. If they're gonna travel through your area and they knew of a scout family, or they would call ahead and ask if they could stay overnight on them. We did it for them quite a few times,
Yeah.
for different groups going through, because my husband was a scoutmaster.
Yes. In fact, we've done it here since we've been. Remember, Byron Hatcher came through with some groups, and that was nice that members of the church opened up their homes to allow them to have a place to stay. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'd be kind of afraid to take somebody off the street nowadays, though, I really would. I would hope for the best, and I might just do it because. I mean, really, it's scary now, because there's so many weird people out there.
Well, that kind of what you're describing described to me of the Good Samaritan type situation. Here's a man that he never met, saw him hurting, needs some help, and he helped him with his wounds, and helped him with a place to stay. That's the kind of hospitality that at that point in time meant, helping people in their need. Yes, sir?
Hebrews 13:2, at the end of that, it says, some have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. I don't know if that applies today, but it's a good thought.
Well, it is, and I think if you look up that word is angelos, which can mean messenger. So here's a messenger from God, and he's come along the way. Or, it may be the fact that, like Hebrews 2, dealing with angels there. Could be the literal thing. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes I'll be going somewhere and I'll just get a hint, I should talk to that person, so I go and I do it, I figure that's something God's telling me to do it. I've done it a couple times. Once was a guy that was high and nobody would sit with him, he was obviously a vagabond. I said, I'll sit with you, what's your name? And we started talking, and by the end of the trip, he said he was going back to his family, he was crying and all this stuff, and he was talking about Jesus. So maybe it helped.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it helped.
Yes, that can be, but you help the person just by listening to what the person is. That's part of it. Yes, sir.
So, let's go back to the verse, I just read, because Cindy brings that up quite often. So, do you take that verse as being possible, as being literal?
Which one?
The one about,
Entertaining angels unaware?
yeah.
I'm saying it could be,
That's what
especially at that time.
he's worried about that it is, so we need to,
Well, here's the deal. If an angel would appear here today, would you know that it's an angel? No. So we need to be careful about that. I prefer, I'm not saying it is, Brother Cosby, I prefer the word messenger because the angels were messengers, and we are messengers. It could be that. But the context indicates it may be angelic type situation. Right?
Well, I was just thinking about hospitality, say just here in this congregation. When we have visitors, and we welcome them to our service
Uh-huh.
and try to build a relationship, and then a lot of cards are written to them,
Uh-huh.
welcoming them back.
Uh-huh.
That's so effective, I think, but it's not including food.
That's right. Hospitality. Well, I'm going to get to let me get a little bit further here. What you're saying, okay? That'll be okay. Okay. Let me see. Let me go a little bit further. Welcoming the sick, the poor. Those are usually, sometimes, especially the poor, can be excluded from participating in hospitality if you're not real careful. Let me see if I have another one here. Hospitality that pleases God must be done without complaint. We talked about that. It includes sometimes with food that we just mentioned, but here's where I'm headed right here. Welcome. That's part of hospitality. Welcoming people. Let them know. Now, the background of that one indicates what? It could be, very well could be. But let's get a little clearer. How about this one? Hotel. They're in the hospitality business. They're doing it for a fee, but they are putting people up for the night for whatever amount, okay? And they provide a place where you can get something to eat, and you can take a shower, and you get something to drink, and all those types of things of our necessities. That's what hospitality is about, supplying the needs of other people. What do you think? Now, whoops, I don't like. See the hospitality? That thing is very sensitive. Hospitality, what's all the things that you see in those pictures up there?
House of business, hospitality as a business.
House of business, ma'am? Place to sleep, something to drink, something to eat. All of those types of things are included in hospitality. We can invite somebody to our home, a person that may be a member of the church somewhere coming through like we have done in the past, inviting them with something to eat, something place to sleep. Security, that was a big thing about hospitality then, was security, making sure that they were safe. That's one of the things that Abraham did. He wanted them to come in because he was afraid something might. Lot was the same way, was he not? He was afraid that something would happen to them on the street, and he said, come in and stay with us. And so that's part of hospitality, including security. What's your thoughts?
I'm looking at the cloth with the arrow wrapped around it, meaning you give up your time,
Uh-huh.
even if you don't think you have the time to give them, you give them your time.
That's very good. Very good. All right, let me see if I can hit the right button this time. Now, you see all of those things right there? In the middle of it is care and service, customer service, customer care, support to the customer, quality given to, and I can't see the solutions, is that what it is? Okay, so that's what we do. We give, as a church, to one another, to people that we can help, is offer hospitality to them. What thoughts do you have? Yes.
Back to Luke 14:14.
Uh-huh.
It tags on the end of that, and you will be blessed. This is about the poor. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous.
Could you read 13 with that, please?
But when you do a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous.
Well, that's right. There's a reward for doing it. You'll be blessed, is the idea. And he goes on in the story there that he said, when you invite your friends, you invite somebody, you expect them to what? Repay. And I've seen, especially, I want to be careful how I say this. There's a generation that expected to be invited to their home if you invite them to the home. And if they don't get invited, they are not very happy people. They feel it's an obligation. Have you ever seen that? Yeah, I've seen it more than once. That people expect a repayment. I did this for you now. Jesus said, that's not the way this thing works. Okay? You don't do things, you don't show hospitality to people of obligating them to do something for you. Okay? No strings attached is the idea that when we come to showing hospitality. But if we're not careful, we can fall in that pitfall of expecting somebody to repay you.
I think when someone can't repay you, that is the ultimate. When you do something for somebody, not that they can't, there's no need for, they don't need to repay you. That's, the reward is in that, I believe.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I wouldn't say that at all. Yes, ma'am.
When you give, it makes you feel great. Remember, be a receiver so somebody else can feel great too.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do both.
Didn't Jesus say that Paul stated in Acts 20 and verse 35 is more blessed to what? Than to what? Receive. That's right. Sometimes people have an expectation that we need to remember. There's a real blessing in helping people, showing care for people, having people associated with them, and eating with them, and so forth. Yes, ma'am.
The point I just wanted to make was it's really hard for some of us to be receivers. And when we're needing it, it's still hard to receive from someone else. But you gotta remember, you're giving them the opportunity to be a giver.
Yes, I was at a, where was I? I was at a raceway over in Decatur. And this real nice gentleman, and I was talking to him a second, and I said, I set my coffee down. And he said, let me buy that for you. I said, no, that's okay, I got it, okay. He said, don't steal my blessing.
There you go.
Felt like a blessing.
And I know I'd never, it really, it just hit me right between the eyes. I said, ooh, didn't think about that. So if somebody offers to do something, remember there's a blessing for that person who's making the offering. Saying, you know, it makes you feel warm inside when you can help people. What do you think? That's basically a hospitality type thing.
Another time in our history when this was very strong was during the Depression years. We have a lot of stories about people taking people in.
Yes. Not that too many years ago, even back in the 50s and early 60s, there was that type of thing. Not as heavily as it was in the Depression age, but people went through that kind of stuff. One of the reasons why there were commodities. You ever heard of commodities? Huh? What are commodities?
What the government buys,
That's right. It's food that you can.
that the government buys in order to help the producers
That's,
have enough money to make another crop.
That's right. And that was a lot of farmers and other people had a lot of pride that they just had to force themselves to go down and get some of that stuff because it hurt their pride to be helped. They're very independent people in their living, and their children and their family, the wives and children, they say, we got to feed them, I got to do something. So they finally cave it in and go down. But sometimes it's a real hard thing for people to accept hospitality, accept help type things. Well, yes, ma'am.
While we were at Central, it started a year, maybe 4 years here, we were getting a new youth minister.
Uh-huh.
Who had just finished college, and this was his first job. So the church needed someplace for him to stay till he could get settled. So, you know, he got him. But we loved it. We just absolutely loved it. And then one night, he was gone doing something, but he had found this little girl that kind of liked him.
Uh-huh.
And she had been coming to church with him.
Uh-huh.
She was a Presbyterian, I think, but she had been coming to church with him and everything, so we got to know her. Well, one night he was gone doing something, he walked at our house. Frank and I were there by ourselves, and the doorbell rang. Well, we went to the door. It was his little girlfriend and one of her friends. And I thought, oh, what have you done, you know? And she said, can we come in? And we said, yes. And she came in, her little friend, and she said, can we sing for y'all? And we said, certainly. So those two girls stood there and serenaded us.
Good.
Now, that was our reward. I mean, we didn't consider it a reward, but I just thought that was a special night.
That was a special thing to do.
Yeah.
And it was kind of you to accept that.
Oh, sure.
That was a gift. It made them feel good. That's just the kind of thing we're talking about. Have you ever gone door to door, say at Christmas time, and sing Christmas carols? I used to do that when I was young, a young preacher, in fact. We would, over in Sandusky, we would do that. And people liked it. Most, I don't think we ever ran into anybody who didn't like it. They could have and said, but I don't know. I never heard of it. Okay, we got some examples, I think, concerning hospitality here. For an example, Nehemiah. Nehemiah, he fed a lot of people, had a lot of people at his table in the book of Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 17, 18. In fact, it describes how many people he fed daily, how much food it took. I think it was 150 there that he fed. And it tells you how many oxen, how many sheep, that were prepared for them. So he was a generous. And he didn't take the king's money, by the way. He didn't rely upon the government basically to take care of the deal. This is me. I'm taking care of this at my expense, so to speak. And then David, he showed hospitality to one of Jonathan's sons, the one that was crippled. You remember him? Huh? And he wanted to take care of him, and he did. And so Solomon, this one, this is Bathsheba. Is it Bathsheba? No, it's not Bathsheba. I got her name right there. The queen. What's her name? Help me out, folks.
Queen of Sheba?
Queen of Sheba, that's right. Queen of Sheba. And she talked about Solomon's table, how much food it was there in it, and he was supplying to folks. And then the Shulamite woman, I think this is probably a very good example. Elijah, you remember, he didn't have a place to stay, and she prepared a place for him to stay and fed him. In fact, she was greatly blessed, I should say. She helped him out in his time, and he didn't have a place to stay, and so she fixed up a place for him to stay. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about in this thing. Then in the New Testament, Mary and Martha. You remember in the book of Luke 10? Somebody turn over Luke 10, verses 38 through 40.
Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me.
And what did Jesus say?
And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her.
So is it possible that we choose the wrong part sometimes in our life? We can.
I think lots of women have the Martha syndrome.
Have what now?
The Martha syndrome.
Worried about with much serving, yeah.
You got to.
Maybe for the wrong attitude.
I can't address that one, so I'll let y'all take care of it. But sometimes we can, if we're not real careful. We can be more concerned about serving and stuff. But that's a good point. Sister Mary Nell, that was a very good point.
Well, the circuit got them together, though.
Sir?
The dinner that she entertained got them together.
That's good. That's a very good point. All right, then Luke, there's the one I was referring to earlier about of taking care of it. And then there's another one I want to refer to, unused table. I think at Matthew 22, when the king had a feast for his son, the wedding feast, and he told them come, and they wouldn't come. There are people who that sometimes you invite and they don't come, you know. Sometimes people say that I'll be there, and you prepare all the stuff, and they don't show up, and you got food for the next 6 months. You ever been that way? Had a couple of those to happen in my lifetime. I'm sure you have too. I think if we say we're going to go to somebody's house, and they spend all the time in preparation, and they have the expense that they have toward that, we should honor them by showing up, you know, unless something drastic happens, and it can. But I think we should honor our commitments to people, especially when they invite you in their home and spend the money and time to prepare. What do you think? Am I wrong?
I think people are getting less hospitable in general. I mean, when I was younger, parties, you know, you used to invite people to parties, and a lot of times you were selling things, or a lady came in, but I don't hear those things going on at all anymore.
Well, it's become less and less over the years.
People don't wanna host parties, they don't want people at their house.
We don't even have, as Americans, have family reunions like we used to have. I remember we used to have a family gathering at least once a year. And it was probably started at the graveyard, at the decoration day. You go and decorate, then you get together at somebody's house and spend some time. But usually that happened once a year, but we don't see that much. Of course, our families are scattered, all over the place too. It's not like we used to have a community that the family lived in this little town and it was easier to get together. But things have changed somewhat over the years, and that's, I think, the lifestyle of independency that we have demonstrated over the years. I think not only individual people are doing that, I see congregations doing that as well. That we used to have gospel meetings, and we invite people to come in and listen. I remember in the church, the building was full. You know, we supported a gospel meeting from all over the place. Have a singing. People would come in and you talk about some of the greatest singing you ever heard in your life. The brethren would get together from different congregations. That's showing hospitality as well. But we don't do that anymore. We are in our independent lives, and we go in our separate direction, and we're losing that fellowship that we need to have with one another. What's your thoughts?
There's still some of it. I know it's one of the things that, and I wish we could get it going here, but in Dalton, we had 15 miles north of the Ringo Church and 15 miles south of the Calhoun Church, and we rotated every fifth Sunday. And we would go to another church, we would have singing, and then that church would provide a meal. And so, and it was a great, how about the singing, the congregation together, and then other folks came too.
Some of the greatest song leaders I ever heard was at some of those singings. I mean, it really, you didn't know that you had that kind of talent in the brotherhood. And you have a singing like that. Any of y'all know Ray Walker? He was a very good song leader. Pat Boone's brother, what's his name? Good song leader. Brother Williams was a good song leader. James Silbox was a good song leader. They were about the two of the best that I've ever worked with in my time in preaching. They were very, very good.
Talking about Ray Walker, he was in Calhoun, Calhoun Church.
Uh-huh.
I guess we'll see people know who Ray Walker is.
Same one with the Elvis Presley bunch?
Jordan
Ayers, that's right. Same one. That's right, he did. They did a very good job. They really did. Okay, 934 is the Song of Invitation. We'll be led in that in just a few moments. Everybody that I can see here either knows about the truth of becoming a Christian, that they must believe that Jesus is the Son of God, they must repent of their sins, must confess that I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God, and be buried with the Lord in baptism and be raised up, to walk in newness of life, and then live faithfully the rest of their life, Revelation 2 and verse 10. If you're here tonight and you have been baptized into Christ, and you've been like the Simon over in Acts 8 that was obeyed the gospel and was pulled away because he was tempted about something. Temptation can sometimes be very strong and can pull you away and pull me away if we're not real careful from the Lord. And we plan to make it right, but we don't, because there's a word called pride that keeps us from admitting that we are wrong. Now, if tonight you need to obey the gospel, or if you need the prayers of the church, won't you come as we sing the song of invitation?
701, first verse on. Jesus, I love thee, I know thou art mine, for he of follies of sin I resign. My precious Redeemer, my Savior art thou. If ever I love thee, my Jesus is now.
We bow in please. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we've had to gather your word, have fellowship on the ask Father that you be with the Monroe Church. Those who are not here, people gather. These are those who have been